Welcome to our exploration of the auditory system, a journey that traces how sound moves from the outer ear to meaningful perception. In this lecture deck, we will follow the physical path of sound, the neural transformations that extract timing and frequency, and the higher-level computations that let us recognize voices, localize threats, and enjoy music. This slide breaks down how the ossicular chain both amplifies and protects the inner ear, acting like a tiny lever that matches low-impedance air to high-impedance cochlear fluid. The diagram shows force amplification and reflexive damping by the stapedius and tensor tympani, mechanisms that boost soft sounds while reducing damage from loud inputs and minimizing energy loss during transmission. The cochlea separates frequencies along a stiffness gradient from base to apex, so high frequencies peak near the base while low frequencies peak near the apex, as the illustration shows. That spectral decomposition is preserved centrally, with frequency-specific neural coding, creating persistent tonotopic maps in the brainstem and cortex that support precise sound analysis throughout the auditory pathway. This panel summarizes mechanotransduction, the conversion of vibration into neural code. Sound waves bend stereocilia, opening tip-link-gated channels, allowing potassium influx that depolarizes hair cells and triggers calcium-dependent neurotransmitter release. The graphics highlight each step and emphasize the remarkable sub-millisecond precision of this process, which underpins accurate timing information for downstream auditory processing. In the cochlear nucleus, distinct cell types extract different features of the auditory nerve input. Octopus cells respond rapidly to sound onset and preserve timing, while bushy cells lock phase for localization. Together, they route timing, intensity, and spectral cues into parallel streams that optimize perceptual tasks like sound localization and speech recognition, as shown in the flow diagram. This slide explains how the auditory system localizes sound using complementary computations. Medial nuclei compute interaural time differences for low-frequency azimuth cues, while lateral nuclei compare level differences for high-frequency cues. The schematic connects these mechanisms to behavioral outcomes, showing how subdegree accuracy supports predator, avoidance, and social engagement by precisely computing sound direction. Here we draw an analogy between cochlear processing and AI models. Tonotopic, frequency to place organization feeds layers that implement lateral inhibition to sharpen representations, while higher cortical layers integrate inputs hierarchically. The diagram contrasts cochlear input, an AI-style layer that preserves tonotopy, and layer 3 integration, explaining how simple tones are built up into intermediate features and then complex spectrotemporal patterns. This slide traces how basic acoustic parameters are progressively abstracted into meaningful categories. Pitch, timbre, and amplitude cues are integrated to form phonemes, musical intervals, and environmental sound identities. The central illustration highlights interaction between sensory encoding and higher-level semantic association, showing how the auditory system converts physical signals into categorical perception and context-dependent interpretation. The concept of the virtual fundamental shows how the auditory cortex reconstructs a missing F0 from harmonic spacing using predictive coding. The figure illustrates harmonics with a missing fundamental and a processing box that combines sensory gaps and statistical regularities to produce a perceived pitch. This reveals how the brain fills in absent information based on learned patterns. This panel describes central auditory suppression and temporal integration. A brief target tone can become inaudible when preceded or overlapped by loud masker noise because central circuits transiently suppress incoming signals. The diagram highlights temporal windows and inhibitory interactions that shape perception, showing that neural summation and suppression beyond cochlear mechanics determine whether a sound reaches awareness. This slide outlines how noise, trauma, and aging damage outer hair cells, raising thresholds, and smearing frequency selectivity, while surviving neurons often show broadened tuning and reduced phase locking. The combined consequence is impaired speech understanding in complex environments despite basic amplification, a point illustrated by the cochlear damage graphics and neural outcome plots on the slide. The final slide emphasizes that hearing is a distributed computation vulnerable at multiple processing stages. Peripheral function can be normal, while brainstem or cortical lesions impair localization, temporal processing, or speech comprehension. The schematic contrasts intact audiograms with central lesions and reminds us that higher-order deficits arise from damage to specific nodes in the auditory network rather than from a single failure point.